But I don't want to just talk about what Cassi does, because that's what she does. I want to talk about who she is. And Cassi is a quiet strength in our church. She's a pillar. She's faithful. She's steadfast. And she has the most beautiful heart. And we are so grateful that she is in our world. And so we are privileged this morning to hear from her and to glean from some of her wisdom of all her years of serving. She loves God. She loves his church. I was even thinking about that song, Jesus at the Centre, because, really for Cassi, that's where he is. And that's why she has the fruit in her life that she does, because he really is at the centre. So we are very grateful. Can we give her a warm welcome as she comes? I love you. They can talk about it.
Thank you so very much. Such kind words. Yeah, you guys can grab a seat. Grab a seat. Welcome, welcome. So nice to see everyone here. Anyone that's new today, we are in this room here, which is normally the room that I run, which is our kids. And so normally we got kids running in here, but our auditorium's having a forced renovation, a forced makeover, which I'm excited to see whenever that might be. And so when that happens, we'll be back next door and the kids can take over this room again. But thank you for the privilege of being able to share with you guys today. If I can be honest, as opposed to lying, why would I? If I can be honest, when Gail first asked me to share, in my head I said no straight away. I was like, nah, not going to happen. I'd come at that time, it was like Good Friday or something, I think, and it was a season I was a little bit tired. I'd come off a big exhibition at work. I'd been in kids program most weeks. It was Good Friday, so we didn't have a kids program that week, which meant it was my first service actually being able to come into church. Big church, I call it. This is big church. And I just felt a little bit depleted and empty. And so Gail asking me to share, I was kind of like, I actually don't think I got anything to give. Tank's empty. Tank's not empty. No, not full. It's empty. I'm depleted. And so I went home and I was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work. I'm tired, God. And he's like, you know what? That's so true. And I don't think any mothers would be able to relate to that. So, yeah, that's right. You can have that week off because that's not something that mothers can relate to at all. I'm like, fine. God. Fancy him being sarcastic with me. But he was, and it got through, and I was like, yeah, straight away, okay. I waited a week, didn't tell anyone that Gail had asked me, and then I came to Gail first, and I said, I'm telling you yes, because I need accountability so that I can't pull out. So I said yes, and here we are. And I'm like, all right, God, what do you want to say to us today? What do you want to encourage us with? And so I went to his word, and yeah, he downloaded, and so I'm going to download on you guys. Woo, thank you. When I think about Mother's Day and I think about motherhood, I understand that it can mean different things to different people, and it can also, even though today is a day where we celebrate mothers and motherhood, it can also be a time that's hard and heartbreaking for some, and I want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge those that have possibly lost their mums physically as well as lost their relationship with their mum, people that have lost their children, people that have lost the relationship with their children, people who have a heart to have had children and that never eventuated. I just want to acknowledge all of those emotions and feelings that come with today. I want to acknowledge that in the room we've got mothers, but then we have people that aren't mothers. And so you might be going, I don't know what's relevant to me today. But I want to, show of hands, who's a mum here this morning? Nice, okay. Show of hands, who has a mum or had a mum? Okay. All right. So I'm speaking just to the people that have raised their hands this morning. God's got something he wants to share with you, and he wants to encourage you this morning. So whatever category you fit in, I want you to insert your name into the things that I'm talking about and take from it what you can today, because he wants to talk to all of us. As it comes to, it's Mother's Day, so I want to sort of mention and start first with some of the titles that come to mums, the titles that we get given. Carer, nurturer, that's nice, isn't that so lovely? Nurse, teacher, caterer, nutritionist, cheerleader, coach, stylist, personal shopper, party planner, event coordinator, Uber driver, finance advisor, tutor, housing provider, cleaner, mediator, encourager, the list goes on. Think about that for a moment. Motherhood is all-inclusive. It's everything. With that comes inevitable seasons of tiredness, because motherhood is a continual outpouring. We're constantly giving when we've got nothing left to give. With that comes feelings and seasons of emptiness, not just times and minutes and days, entire seasons where we feel empty and then I've exhausted everything, depletion. I don't know about you, but I've definitely felt those seasons. And it changes. Kids start young. Mine are 14 and 12 now. So we're entering a teenage time, and I know that that's going to bring with it a whole fresh wave of tiredness. I'm not waking up to feed them in the middle of the night, but I'm staying up because they're out playing Xbox till all hours of the night, and I can't quite go to sleep until I hear the door come in, door shut, right? But that feeling, it's not exclusive to mothers, I understand that. So no matter where you're at, if you've been in that season of feeling a little bit empty, here's what God wants to say today. I've titled this The Invitation. If you're a note taker, I always like it when whoever's speaking starts with a title, because I can't write anything until I've written the title. So I'm going to write that. The Invitation, that'll make sense further on. Stay tuned. If you have your Bibles with you this morning, I want you to turn to 1 Kings. If you don't, it'll be up there. Oh, there you go. They jumped the gun. It's up there. 1 Kings, chapter 17. I'm going to take a moment, because I always bring my physical Bible, and it takes a little while to find the pages. So 1 Kings, chapter 17, and we're going to read from verse 7. I just want to set the scene a little bit here. This is following King David. So we are in Old Testament times. King David has finished his reign, and there's a whole bunch of kings that have followed, and they're not doing a real great job. Israel's kind of been run into the ground. It's not looking overly hopeful. But with that, all the kings that have followed, God has brought in prophets. Prophets are there to try to bring back the kings and the people back to the word of God and what their calling is, what Israel's calling is. That's their job. They carry a lot of responsibility. And so Elijah is one of those prophets. He's trying to bring back and align the kings with the calling of God on Israel's life. So Elijah, at this time, has told all the people the word from God that the country's going to be in drought for quite a while. So there's drought in the land, and God told Elijah to go to a ravine, and he's going to feed him and keep him nourished by some birds. God's weird like that. He uses weird ways of doing things, doesn't he? Like, if you actually read it, you're like, that's interesting. He was just sitting in a ravine and birds came and dropped things for him. Anyway, so that's what's happened, and that's where we're at when we pick up in verse 7. Just wanted to give you some context. So it says, verse 7, sometime later, the brook dried up because there'd been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, said, go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon, don't know, whichever you would like, and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink?" As she was going to get it, he called, "And bring me, please, a piece of bread." She replies to him and says, "As surely as the Lord your God lives," she replied, "I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home to make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." Have a think about the weight of that for just a minute. I've definitely been in seasons where I'm feeling a little tired. I'm feeling a little empty, depleted, nothing to give. And you're like, I could just die. Literally, I'm doing fine. I'm not going to die. I'm not in that place. And there's probably, I would say, I can't speak for everyone, but most of us probably haven't been quite to that point. She is literally down to her last bit of provision for her and her son. As a mother, I imagine that would have broken her heart to not be able to provide for her son. So she's getting ready to prepare what little she has left. They're probably at this point already starving, no way of providing for herself. She's a widow in a land that's in drought, no way of providing. She's about to cook her last meal and expecting to die. Let's read on. Verse 13. So that's where she's at. Elijah says to her, "Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." Does anyone feel a little awkward at that request? We've just had to think about what position she's in. She's feeling pretty down about herself. She's feeling like she's got nothing to give. She literally has maybe a handful of flour and a little bit of oil, and yet she's asked, "Make something for me first, and then with what's left, you can have that." Does anyone else go, "That's awkward"? If you were standing there witnessing, like, "Oh my goodness, let her just have the bread." Does that feel like motherhood sometimes? Like constantly you're giving out before you can actually take something second? But it's followed by the promise of this miracle. The thing is that request isn't about God taking from her what little she has left. We're often restricted by looking at what we have in front of us. All we can see is what's in our hand. What we see is what's around us, what little we have, and it can blind us. We've got blinkers on, that's all we see. But what's interesting is that God's looking at the big picture, right? He can see what's come before, and he can see what's ahead. He's seeing the people's lives around us that we can't see. We're just looking at what we've got in our hand, and so we're restricted by that. We're blinded by it. But God's looking at this big picture. So with that big picture perspective in mind, God is inviting the widow to trust him. And therein comes the title of today's message, The Invitation. He is inviting her to trust him because he can see the big picture. Yep, you've got that little bit in your hand, but I've got the big picture in mind. I'm just asking for you to trust me. That's what God is doing with us today. He's looking at what we have and he's calling to us and saying, I'm inviting you to trust me with what you have. It's interesting because she actually doesn't have any reason to trust this man Elijah. She's a Gentile, meaning she's living outside of Israel. She probably grew up in a place that's didn't have Jewish customs. She probably doesn't have an understanding fully of who this God of Israel is. She's got no reason to trust this man and what he's saying. But But I love that she actually does, though. She puts her trust out there when she has no reason to. Notice that God didn't ask her to give what she didn't have. I think that's important. She wasn't asked to feed an army. The instruction wasn't, feed me and the army that's following me. She was asked to give out of what she did have. Yes, it wasn't much, but she was only asked to feed Elijah. And he wouldn't have said, make something for me and then with what's left, you have yours. He wouldn't have said that if there wasn't enough for both him and her. So he hasn't asked her to give beyond what she's capable of. He's asked her to give from what she did have. We all have something in our hands to give. We all have something. It might seem small and it might seem insignificant, but it's unique. What you have to give is different to what I have to give. It might not look like much, but it is something. We often get distracted by the things that we don't have. We live in a time when everyone is sharing all the things that they have on all the different platforms and media. Everyone's sharing what they have and where they're going and what they're doing. And with that can come a constant reminder, if we're watching it all, it can feel like a reminder of what we don't have by looking constantly at what everyone else does have. Does anyone else feel like that? I used to love, my favourite day would be a Saturday when there's nothing planned, there's nothing on the schedule, and I can just wake up and we can be as a family like, what are we going to do today? You know, the world's our oyster. I can do whatever. There's no plans, there's no invitations, there's nothing to do. They're the best day. And so you just spend the day lounging around thinking it's the bee's knees. This is fantastic. And then later on at the end of the day, you might pop up Instagram and scroll through, and then you see all these adventures that people go on. You're like, oh my goodness, they went down the beach today. That looks fun. Why didn't we think to go to the beach? And you're seeing something else. Oh, they ate at that new place. I've been wanting to go there. Why didn't we do that today? And what was a fantastic day, just hanging about at home, simply with my family that I actually loved and was fantastic, has all of a sudden not been so great in comparison to the things that I've been exposed to. And so we're always looking at those things that others have or are doing and then translating that into what's in my hand and going, oh, what I have isn't that great anymore. But it is, it's unique. That day that I spent with my family was perfect for me. That was what I had, and it's perfect. So let's not get distracted by the things that are around us. Ignorance is actually bliss sometimes. Let's just be ignorant to what's going on around us and just eyes in front of us. We need to learn to quiet that noise. So I want to take a moment now. What have you got in your hands? What does that look like? For some, it's something physical that can actually be shared with others. Might be something you can give or make. Others, you might not have something physical to give, but you might have time that others don't have. Time to spend with your kids and with others. You know, when it comes to homework, I'm hopeless if I get asked to help with maths. Maths is like not my thing. I don't have maths skills to give. But if they come home with an art project, one day they might. We're going to kill it. It's going to be good. What they do will be great. It's not what I'm going to do. But I'll help them. I'll give them some instruction along the way. You might not be a gourmet chef. So you might not be looking at all these fantastic meals that other mothers are providing and be like, oh, I don't have that skill. But have you got a dinner table? Have you got a seat available that you could open for your kids' friends to come along and be a part of the table that's there? I still love that message you preached on the table, Brownie. Sticks with me all the time. Have you got a seat at the table ready to fill with teenagers or young kids or whatever it is? Doesn't matter what you're cooking. You don't need that skill, but I've got a seat, I've got a stool I can pull up. Doesn't seem like much, does it? Might not be the physical things, but I can be generous with my words. You might not have something physical to give, but have you got an encouragement word for your child, for a family member? Let's not discount the small things that are in our hands today. Don't keep looking for the big thing that you don't have. What small thing have you got? The widow had a handful of flour and a little bit of oil. That's all she had. But we're going to find out what happens after that. It's funny, when it comes to our kids, it's actually the simple things that they want anyway. Like, it seems cliche to say, but you give them a big box with a toy in it, they're like, great, can I play with the box? Right? Like refrigerator box is the best thing in the world. I don't know if you saw number of years ago, there was a Master Food ad. Remember ads on TV? If you watch that, you get ads sometimes. And there was a Master Food ad, and they interviewed families. And they started with the adults and the parents first. And they said, if you could invite anyone to dinner, dead or alive, who would it be? And so the parents are sitting there thinking, and some are like, oh, Justin Bieber. They list this person. They list a great politician. Someone said, oh, Bob Hawke. Someone was like, oh, Nelson Mandela, someone that's done something big in the world. And the parents were listing all of these like famous celebrities and all the rest. And then it came to the kids, and they put the parents in front of the camera, well, like they were in another room watching their kids' response. And when the kids are then asked, if you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be? And they're like, I reckon like our whole extended family. So mum and dad and the grandparents, like that whole extended family, that's who I'd have dinner with. Another one, same response. Oh, mum and dad. And they keep listing. All the kids answered, first and foremost, I'd love to just have dinner with mum and dad. And then my brothers, I just love that dinner time. We sit and we talk and ask how the day was. How often do we think our kids are wanting so much more from us when they're actually just wanting to sit at the dinner table and have our time and have our attention? Let's not discount those small things. So God's asked the widow to give from what she has, not from what she doesn't have. We're going to read again from verse 15. So she's been asked for the request, and she's been given what the Lord said would happen. So she went away and did as Elijah had told her. She was obedient. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. Her obedience opened the door for God to come through on his promise. His promise was that that jar would never run dry. And he was able to come through on that because of her obedience. It opened the door. He provided for Elijah, the widow, and her family for the duration of that drought, however long that was. But what's really interesting, and I want to make note of this, is the miracle itself. Do you notice that the miracle wasn't abundance? Think about that. It doesn't say that the flour was overflowing. The oil in the jar wasn't overflowing. It simply says that it never ran dry. The miracle wasn't big and glamorous. How often are we looking for the big and the glamorous? We do something and we think, all right, now God's going to pour into our lives and it's going to be big and extravagant. It wasn't that, but it was constant daily provision. Constant daily provision. The widow still had to wake up every morning. She still had to have faith to look in the jar. Who knows, it could have just remained as one cup in the bottom of the jar. She still had to look in. She still had to pull the flour out, pull the oil out, and make the bread. She still had to do the dishes afterwards. God didn't provide a servant to do the things for her. He didn't stop the drought, but he provided for her in that drought. The miracle isn't that you're going to feel energized all the time. It's not that things are then going to get easy or that you'll never feel the need again. The circumstances surrounding the widow didn't get easier. The drought was still there. But what is amazing is that miracle was a quiet promise. You might still feel like you have little. She still only had flour and a little bit of water. But the season, it was still hard, but somehow, she had enough for today, every day. For her and Elijah and her son, every day she had enough to get through that drought. Daily provision looks different for everyone. What God provides for me on the daily is going to be different to what he provides for you. For the widow, it was simple and tangible. It was food to keep her alive. For others, it might be the strength to wake up every morning and make breakfast. That's daily provision. You have the ability to wake up and make breakfast for your family. You might be able to wake up numerous times throughout the night and feed your child. You have the strength and the ability to do that. That is daily provision. You might have fresh wisdom each day for managing the household schedule. God knows that requires wisdom. Like seriously, I've got only 2 kids. I can't imagine more kids with more sports and activities and afternoon things going on. That schedule management is huge. But daily provision is God giving you the wisdom to be able to manage that. It might be time and capacity to meet with other mums and offer encouragement. It might be a job that provides for your family and your household. It might be the time to sit and eat a meal with your family. Let's not discount those daily blessings that God is giving us, that daily provision that is actually so much bigger than what we give it credit for. It won't necessarily look like overflowing blessing, but it will be quiet and it will be consistent. Let's acknowledge that daily provision. Let's be sure to give thanks to God constantly for that ability to wake up every day and give to the people around us. Let's be careful not to always be looking for more. Let's not always be looking for the big thing that's coming. Let's learn to be consistent and grateful for the daily provision that we have in front of us. You know what? That could be the end of the story, and I think there's enough there for a massive lesson for us to learn from. That daily provision, I could keep harping on about it, but I think the small consistency of God's blessings is underestimated and undervalued, but he's always there, and I can wake up every day. And so that could be the end of the story, and I could close the book, but there's more scriptures there, so I'm kind of forced to go on. So we're going to read from verse 17. Sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. He grew worse and worse and finally stopped breathing. This kind of took a turn, didn't it? She said to Elijah, "What do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son?" "Give me your son," Elijah replied. He took him from her arms, carried him to the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on his bed. Then he cried out to the Lord, "Lord my God, have you brought tragedy even on this widow I am staying with by causing her son to die?" Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times and cried out to the Lord, "Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him." The Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. Elijah picked up the child, carried him down from the room into the house. He gave him to his mother and said, "Look, your son's alive." Probably not like that. "Look, your son is alive." Maybe more like that. Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is truth." That widow's initial act of obedience in giving from what little she had is actually setting the scene for something far greater to take place. She didn't know that that was coming. The only promise that she had from God was that the flour wouldn't run out. So that was enough of a promise. She gave from that nothing, but it set a scene. It set a foundation there that allowed something far greater to take place. See, initially her physical needs were met. She was kept alive by the constant provision. But her son's healing, so this next part of the story, it brought with it spiritual revelation that was bigger. Her eyes were then opened. She's moved from just physical provision and her physical needs being met to her eyes being opened to how amazing God actually is. No doubt the word of that story spreads in that nation, which is outside of Israel. It would have gone far. Someone was raised from the dead. Her son died. That story would have been told far bigger than just the provision, the daily provision. That's the sort of story that ripples out into society. Life and faith are restored in her home. Saying yes to God's invitation will open the gates for something far greater that we can imagine, and the ripple will go beyond what we are even going to see. Motherhood can sometimes be a bit of a bubble. It's all consuming. You get sort of shut in sometimes physically, you're stuck at home. You can get caught up in the routines and what's going on with your family, and that can kind of feel like all of your world. But the purpose beyond the daily routine can be unknown. We often can't see outside of that bubble. The widow said yes. Her household was fed. Her son was then healed. God's power was revealed in a foreign land. And Elijah was sustained. So his story ultimately contributes to the larger story of the entire nation of Israel coming back. Because she said yes. So her family was sustained. Elijah's life was sustained. A nation is affected because she said yes with what little she had in her hands. You saying yes to God's invitation to trust him, and that's his invitation to you today. He's saying, trust me. Trust me. Keep giving when it feels like you've got nothing to give. Give from what you have. Open your eyes to what it is that you have and give. And when that trust is seen, when he sees that, yes, you trust him with the little, that door is opened for future miracles that we don't even know we're going to need yet. Hearts are going to be shaped thinking about our children. When we give daily from the small things, those lives are being shaped that are ultimately going to continue to ripple beyond our life, right? It's not just about me. It's not about the provision that God's going to give me. He's going to bless me, and I'm happy with that, and I've got confidence in that. But ultimately, for all of us, our lives aren't really about us. Yes, he loves us, and he wants to bless us. He fed the widow, but he's also looking at that bigger picture. Can we open our eyes to that bigger picture? God, just give us a glimpse of the bigger picture of the lives around us that you want to impact. that you're calling us to say yes to that invitation to trust him. Motherhood's always going to be hard. I hate to say that, but it is. Because anytime you love someone, you're opening yourself up to the fear of losing them. You're opening yourself up to all the things that come with that love. But God's got us in the midst of it. In the middle of the drought, God's wanting to provide for us in that, to love us in it. And he's wanting to sort of extend that beyond. When I think about our kids program across the road and I think about us investing into those kids each day, sometimes, and I'm going to be honest, sometimes I feel like I don't have much to give them. I kind of exhausted what I've got to share, feeling a little tired. But I show up. We all do. The team shows up. And we walk out there and we give from what little we have. And the kids are stoked. They don't need it all. They don't need a big program. If I've got a ball, I can work something out. But those lives are being shaped, and I believe that. I believe that those lives are being moulded and their eyes are being opened to the things of God, and that they're then going to go and carry that beyond to their schools. What little have you got in your hands today that you can give? You know, when it comes to our kids program, you might not have the ability to be on and help out, volunteer in kids every week, but surely you could, like, once a month, help out and volunteer in the kids team. Is that something little you've got in your hand? Is that something you could offer? God's saying, yep, you've got that. You've got that ability. Once a month, you could invest in that. God's going to pour back into your life beyond what you imagine. Is that okay? I want to invite the band to come back up. And I'd love everyone to stand up this morning. Everyone's so quiet. There's a few things that I want you to think about this morning. No matter where you're at, no matter what situation you're in, mother, non-mother, God's put something in your hand. So I want you to close your eyes. Even hold your hands out in front of you if that feels comfortable. If not, just stand there. But I want you to think about what God has placed in your hands. What's the small thing that God's placed there? You might not have thought about it as anything worthwhile. Is it time? Is it a snippet of time in your weekly schedule that you can use to give to someone else? Is it a word of encouragement that you can give to someone else? Is it space in your household to offer to someone that might need that safe space? Is it something physical that you can actually give? A gift that you've been given, a skill that you have that you can offer freely to someone else? The widow only had a cup of flour and a little bit of oil. She was ready to die. She was at the end. If you're feeling like you're at the end of what you have to give, don't lose sight of what's in your hand. Don't lose sight of what you have to offer. It's not up to us to know how it needs to be used, where it's going to be going. The only responsibility we have is to give that, to trust God. He's inviting us to trust Him with that this morning. Are you going to accept that invitation this morning? Are you going to say, yes, God, use what I have, however small and insignificant it is. Yes, God, I'm willing to give that into your hands. God, we thank you for what you've placed in our hands. Help us to see it. open our eyes to the things that you've already blessed us with. The second thing I want you to think about is what that daily provision looks like. When you give, God's providing that daily provision. I want you to acknowledge the things that you have and leave today with a gratefulness for that daily provision. Yeah. Not just what we have in our hands, but what is God giving us in turn that we can be grateful for. God, forgive us for always looking for the big miracle. Forgive us for always looking to what our neighbours have and in turn being neglectful of the things that we already have, the ways that you've already blessed us. God, help us to see those things, and we thank you for them. We thank you for that quiet promise and that daily provision that you pour into our lives. Finally, God, we just thank you, knowing for the big miracle that may come in the future. We prepare ourselves by giving continually with what we don't have, or the small things that we have, knowing that that's going to go beyond where we could ever imagine. We thank you ahead of time for the lives that are going to be changed, directions that are going to be corrected, courses that are going to be set afresh because of what we give today. Yeah. We thank you for our children and we lift them up to you. We thank you that as we give into them each day, as little as it might look, we thank you that their lives are being shaped and that you hold them in your hands. We thank you for that, God. God, we give you glory today and we thank you for your heart towards us, and we ask that we would have your heart in all that we do. In Jesus' name, amen.